The strongest people you know are doing things in private that would horrify the self-help gurus. What separates those who collapse under pressure from those who become unstoppable isn't what they do in public. It's the 5 brutal practices they guard in secret. Here's what nobody tells you. Mental strength isn't built through affirmations or positive thinking. It's forged through behaviors that most people would call selfish, cold, or even cruel. Therapists see this pattern repeatedly, but rarely admit it publicly, because it contradicts everything our culture teaches about being a good person. The truth is uncomfortable. But if you're serious about genuine resilience, you need to hear it. Practice number 1. Let's start with the first practice that sounds almost sociopathic when you first hear it. Mentally strong people regularly practice emotional detachment from people they care about. Not abandonment, not coldness in the moment, but a deliberate mental exercise where they imagine their life continuing perfectly well if certain people disappeared tomorrow. This sounds terrible, right? Like something a villain would do. But here's the psychological mechanism at work. Your brain creates what neuroscientists call emotional dependencies, which are essentially neural pathways that link your sense of safety and identity to specific people. This happens automatically, especially in close relationships. The problem is, these dependencies make you fragile. When you can't psychologically survive without someone, you become controllable, anxious, and unable to set boundaries. You tolerate bad behavior. You sacrifice your needs. You become smaller. The practice works like this. Once a week, mentally strong people sit quietly and visualize their life without their partner, their best friend, or their parent. Not wishing them gone, but genuinely planning how they'd rebuild, who they'd become, what they'd do differently. This creates what psychologists call psychological insurance. It's not preparing to leave. It's ensuring you're staying by choice, not desperate need. The people who skip this practice end up in relationships where they're terrified to speak up, where they accept mistreatment because the alternative, being alone, feels like death. Think about it like this. A building with one support beam collapses easily. A building with multiple support systems can lose one and still stand. You're building multiple support systems in your identity, so no single person becomes the beam holding up your entire psychological structure. Practice number 2. Now here's the second practice that'll make people uncomfortable. Mentally strong people keep a private list of everyone who's betrayed, disappointed, or hurt them, and they never fully trust those people again. Ever. Society tells us forgiveness means forgetting, that holding on to past hurts is toxic. That's partially true for random strangers, but completely wrong for people in your inner circle. Your brain has something called a prediction engine. It's constantly using past data to forecast future behavior. When someone shows you they're capable of betraying you under pressure, lying when it benefits them, or abandoning you when you're inconvenient, your prediction engine logs that data. Ignoring it isn't forgiveness, it's willful blindness. It's like touching a hot stove, getting burned, and then insisting you should touch it again to prove you've healed. The practice is simple, but requires honesty that most people avoid. In a private journal or document, mentally strong people record specific incidents where someone revealed their true character. Not vague feelings, but concrete actions. Then they adjust their trust levels accordingly. They might maintain the relationship, stay cordial, even continue loving that person, but they never give them access to vulnerable parts of their life again. They don't announce this. They don't create drama. They just quietly recalibrate. This is what people mistake for coldness. It's pattern recognition. The mentally weak keep giving people unlimited chances, keep being surprised by predictable behavior, keep getting hurt in the exact same ways. The strong learn once and adjust permanently. Practice number 3. Third practice, and this one challenges everything about modern empathy culture. Mentally strong people deliberately reduce their empathy for others, self-created problems. Not for tragedies or bad luck, but for predictable consequences of repeated bad decisions. This sounds harsh until you understand the neuroscience. Empathy activates the same brain regions as personal distress. When you empathize deeply with someone's self-created chaos, your nervous system experiences their stress as your own. Do this repeatedly, and you develop what's called compassion fatigue, where your capacity to care about anything, including your own goals, depletes. You become an emotional dumping ground. Here's the key distinction. Compassion without boundaries is self-destruction. Mentally strong people look at someone complaining about being broke while making daily luxury purchases, someone lonely who sabotages every relationship, someone stressed who refuses every solution offered, and they consciously dial down their emotional investment. Not publicly, not meanly, but privately, they stop carrying water for people who keep punching holes in their own bucket. The practice involves a simple question. Is this person suffering the result of circumstances beyond their control, or consequences they're actively choosing? If it's the latter, you can care without caring. You can listen without absorbing. You can support without saving. This boundary is what prevents you from being drained by the perpetually drowning who refuse life preservers. Practice number 4. Number 4 gets to the heart of why this matters. Mentally strong people regularly engage in what psychologists call negative visualization, imagining worst-case scenarios in vivid detail. Losing their job, their health failing, relationships ending, public humiliation. This practice comes from ancient Stoic philosophy, but it's backed by modern psychology. Your brain treats imagined experiences similarly to real ones. When you visualize disaster and your survival beyond it, you're essentially running a simulation that proves to your nervous system that you can handle it. This is the opposite of positive thinking, which often creates fragility because you're unprepared for reality's inevitable difficulties. Once a month, take 15 minutes and imagine something you're terrified of happening. Walk through the immediate aftermath, the feelings, then the practical steps you take, and finally, the version of yourself that emerges 6 months later. You'll notice something powerful. In almost every scenario, future you is okay, maybe different, maybe scarred, but functioning and moving forward. This practice removes catastrophe's power over your present decisions. You stop avoiding difficult conversations because you know you'd survive the fallout. You take bigger risks because you've already survived the failure in your mind. Practice number 5. The fifth and final practice is perhaps the most controversial. Mentally strong people maintain a private, non-negotiable hierarchy of their own needs above almost everyone else's, almost all the time. Not occasionally, not when it's convenient, but as a default operating system. This sounds like textbook narcissism until you understand what actually happens when you don't do this. Without a protected hierarchy where your core needs, your rest, your goals, your boundaries come first, you become what psychologists call other-directed. Your life becomes a series of reactions to other people's demands, emergencies, and preferences. You mistake this for kindness, but it's actually a failure of self-respect that eventually breeds resentment. The practice is this. Before agreeing to anything, mentally strong people ask, does this align with or detract from my primary goals and needs right now? If it detracts, the answer is no, regardless of pressure, guilt, or social expectation. They might make exceptions for true emergencies, but they define emergencies strictly. Immediate physical danger or genuine crisis, not someone's poor planning or emotional manipulation. This is what people call selfish. But here's the truth. You cannot pour from an empty cup isn't just a cliche, it's neurological reality. When you're depleted, you have nothing valuable to offer anyone. The strongest people protect their cup obsessively in private, which is precisely what allows them to be genuinely generous in public. Here's what this all adds up to. Mental strength isn't about being harder on yourself. It's about being clearer about reality, more honest about patterns, and more protective of your psychological resources. These 5 practices create what resilience actually is. The capacity to face reality without breaking, to adjust without losing yourself, to care without being consumed. Start with one practice this week. Pick the one that made you most uncomfortable because that's probably the boundary you need most. Real growth happens in the gap between who you've been taught to be and who you need to become.